of chapter reviews of Mark Manson's Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. This is chapter number 5. I actually didn't write down what it was called. It's called You Are Always Choosing. Very fitting, actually. So, chapter number 5 starts off by saying that this chapter and the next 5 chapters are going to be 5 different values that you can adopt to create a healthier outlook on life and just, be better. So I'm just going to briefly run through them, and then we're going to start in on defining the first value. So the 5 values are responsibility, uncertainty, failure, rejection, and the contemplation of mortality. And as the chapters go on, we will get into what each of those things mean. So first off, let's get into responsibility. Alright, so again, I'm just reading out the notes that I took from reading this book, and I'll share them with you. So the first point that I have is that problems and pain change drastically based upon whether or not we choose them for ourselves or we felt helpless and thrust into it. So the chapter starts off with an example from Mark of, basically this contrast where, if you're woken up with a gun to your head and someone said, run 5.6 miles or your friends and family will all die, you're going to be pretty upset about that, and it's going to be painful and emotional, and it's just not going to be a great thing. Or you could train and choose to run a 5.6 mile marathon and have all your family and friends there to cheer you on, and it could be a very empowering, powerful moment. So basically, with the first point that I said, Mark explains that, in the first example, you didn't choose to run those miles, and it's, it's the same miles in both situations, but in the second one, you chose. And that power of choice, and kind of control, is a huge shift in how we feel about a problem. You're still feeling the pain of running the miles, but it's felt differently once we add choice to that situation. Then there's another story that he gives. It's a story of William James, the father of psychology, of American psychology. Basically, he grew up this kid with a lot of different health issues, and he's into painting, but no one will buy his paintings. He goes on this great, his father gets him into medical school. This is turning out well. Medical school, he drops out, then he goes on some Amazon or whatever excursion, almost dies of smallpox, comes home, and gives himself this little test. He says, okay, I'm going to live 1 year as if everything that's happened in my life has been my responsibility and, something I can control. And then, if it doesn't work, whatever, then I'll just know that, I'm helpless in all the suffering that I felt. And basically, he becomes this, great psychologist. And that's kind of the lesson that is drawn from this story that Mark gives us. He says, we don't always control what happens to us, but we always control how we interpret what happens to us and how we respond to it. This is a very similar message to what Tony Robbins talks about in a lot of his books. If you don't know who Tony Robbins is, he's this really big kind of personal coach figure. And this is one of my actual personal mantras, is you have the power of choice to choose how you feel about things, how you react, etc., etc. And then, coincidingly, we choose our values and what fucks to give. For example, there's this scenario where there's this guy, and he says to the bartender, women won't date me because I am short, and women are superficial, and they just don't like short guys, so I have a bad sex life now. And then the bartender says to him, maybe it's because you're really, self-pitying, and women just don't want to date a guy that's, really not confident, and thinks so badly of women and whatever. So basically, in the one, he's saying like it's women's fault, it's this value of height that he can't control, and that's why he can never get a girl. Whereas in the opposite, other reason why he might not be getting those dates is something that he can control. It's his personality, basically, how he carries himself. So, and then there's some stuff that Mark talks about, you know, really painful traumas and things that, you know, we might think like, well, you know, let's say someone loses their child, or, you know, there's a suicide attack. You know, we want to think that, like, it's so hard to control how you would feel about something like that. Of course, you're going to feel sad and pain. And the whole concept of this is not to be like, oh, well, my pain is, like, worse than yours, so how can you tell me that I still have a choice on how to feel, yada, yada, yada. Really, what Mark is trying to say is that unhappiness sucks, and sadness sucks, and pain sucks, no matter how small or big the situation is. But still, no one is responsible for your unhappiness. No one else is responsible for your unhappiness. You still choose. Even though, and you know, you're allowed to choose to feel sad about something. Although it can be a different story if you're feeling sad and self-pitying over a long stretch of time, you know. You get a chance to, you're allowed to have a chance to mourn, but not, you know, wallow. Well, you're allowed, but it's just not that healthy. And what Mark says, what I was trying to say before, is that really it's our responsibility to move on from pain and trauma, you know, eventually, and the cards that were dealt, and just to try and make the best decisions that we can with the situations that we're given. Yeah, that's basically all we can do. Then he also goes on to talk about this victimhood chic, or chick, I don't know how he wants to say it, phenomena in the media where he says that everyone, you know, gets offended over everything, and it's just this back and forth of, no, I'm offended, no, this is about me, this is about me. And then the main importance or victims of a situation are lost and just detracted from. Basically, this phenomena, what I gathered from it, it's basically saying that, you know, people are just choosing to feel angry and passionate and offended about things and in pain about things because it kind of makes them feel good in some sick way. And, you know, in the end, everyone's trying to play the victim card, but they feel offended because they're choosing to be offended. Coincidingly, you know, there are shitty things that other people do that are offensive, and, you know, that doesn't just, you know, saying, oh, we just shouldn't get offended, that doesn't, like, justify their actions, but people waste a lot of energy on, like, stupid things. Basically, that's what I gathered from it. Yeah, and then the very end of the chapter, he asks the question, so, how do you change your values? Well, it's not really a how, it's a constant choice. So, back to the bad values and how what we learned in this chapter of you choose how you feel and react. Basically, it's a very simple concept on how to change your outlook on life and change how you're feeling, but it's very hard to do. So, you know, let's take a very simple example. Let's say cashier's rude to you. Maybe normal you would just get outraged and be like, oh my god, you're being really rude, or you'll just feel really passive aggressive the rest of the day, or just kind of pissed off. Whereas changed values, you could be like, well, you know, shit happens, I don't give a fuck about this because I give a fuck about more important things. And then you just move on with your life. I think a better example would probably be, let's say we take the whole bad value of always being right. let's say you are working at a fast food chain and you accidentally get someone's order wrong. You could crucify yourself for it internally, or you could be like, you know what? I'm a human, and I'm going to get things wrong sometimes. So instead of ruining the rest of my day feeling super low and self-loathing about this, I can just accept my failure and move on and just try and do better. So that's all you can do. So yeah, those are the examples on how you can change. But again, hard because once we start feeling annoyed about the little things, it can be hard to stop doing that. But again, it's a choice, and like muscles, our brain and our emotions and our reactions just need to be trained to be better and more healthy. That is all that I have for you guys on chapter number 5 of Mark Manson's Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. I hope you enjoyed this chapter, and I will see you guys in the next one.